Good evening, and my pleasure to be among you all. Thank you, Ambassador, for having given me this opportunity. You're right in saying that the Indian diaspora here is not a very big number. I understand all over the world there are more than over 3.2 million Indians, and of that, only about 15,000 are in Korea, South Korea. And even in that, about 2,000 are not really so much diaspora. They are people who are probably seeking some kind of a asylum. And the rest of them are students and other, fairly what can be called as a floating number. One set of students now, another set coming next year or so. So it's not for India, it's not a very big number. But for, say, South Korea, wherein a lot of manufacturing excellence has been achieved in the last couple of decades, our young engineers or student of the STEM being here actually gives you a lead advantage of understanding how Korea has managed it in the form of starting at a low base but achieving a very high outcome in the manufacturing sector with also high-end technology, specializing in certain areas like steel, producing such unique quality of steel which is sought after all over the world. They've always had the traditional strength of textiles, into which India also contributes in some form, either through the yarn or something else which comes here. So it's not that destination where people have gone because, oh, you found, like in the Bay Area, San Francisco, all startups will have to be there. That's the Mecca, or that's the Jerusalem, that's the Kashi of every, startup young mind. But Korea has its big strengths. And if Indians can come here and be of uh, a bridge, in the sense either you learn or you contribute or you acquire some skills and go away, it gives you a lead advantage elsewhere or even here. But even from the little conversations that I've had with the ambassador, the biggest block is the language. Indians will have to acquire knowledge of Korean, working knowledge of Korean. And that, if we are able to provide even in Indian universities, we've just started doing that for Japanese, Korean, and in some cases the Latin American, Spanish and Portuguese. So if a graduate coming out of a college is already with working knowledge of a particular language, access to that country, or for companies which are in that country to recruit such people with such skills would be far more promising. So I would think that is the first thing I would want to emphasize. However, talking about India, Ambassador touched upon certain aspects. What I would like to highlight is, yes, we are noticed because we are the fastest growing economy, a large economy, and not for just this year, even for the coming year. We are also noticed for the way in which we've handled the economy during the pandemic and immediately after that for the revival's sake. Tomorrow, in fact, in the ADB Governors Seminar, that is the topic on which we are expected to contribute. If Southeast Asia, East Asia can contribute towards global growth, what are the kind of things that we need to place emphasis on? And will balancing revival, a stable revival, and a sustainable growth, will that be a challenge? And if it is going to be a challenge, what are the kind of challenges that you have to, be prepared for or have thoughts which can come as out of the box solutions for the problems that you're facing. Not just for India, but I think everywhere. Economies which are large and which have the wherewithal to face any kind of challenge are today looking at a long drawn recession, and also looking at the central banks in those countries not having any other tool to handle it but only go on raising interest. And if it is raising the interest, like the way earlier interest rates were very low for long, now interest rates are going to go on only because recession seems to be there and appears to be going on for probably for a long period. So earlier it was interest rate, now it's inflation, both dragging for a long time. And institutions like the central banks don't seem to have multiple tools with which they can handle it. They have singularly one tool, which is the interest rate management. And if countries are going to follow in a synchronized manner, for every increase by the Fed, somebody else in the central bank in Europe or anywhere else also follows it, then it's so predictable that too many countries in that string of activity are all going to have the same intended or unintended consequences. So, in such a situation globally, how can economies, which are particularly emerging market economies, who are all showing good sign of growth, whether it's Indonesia, whether it is India. India is the fastest, but many other emerging economies are also showing good growth rates. So, is it possible for us to sustain that growth? Is it possible for us to give greater energy to that growth momentum so that the emerging markets can literally be the engines of growth and help the global crisis be solved? So, in that, India being the president of G20 this time, and also, as is the word used in G20 context, the Troika, the president before India and the president after India and India, the three put together forming the Troika, are all emerging markets. Indonesia held it before us, we hold it now, and the next will be Brazil. So, as a result, the voice of emerging markets, India as an emerging market, and also because the Prime Minister of India has taken this initiative to hear all the global South nations as to what they expect in this global resetting time. How do they expect their voice to be heard? So, global voice of the global South, other than being an emerging market ourselves, makes it very critical that the 3 years are going to be important for the global economy to reset itself, readjust to the global realities. Recession on the one hand, revival from COVID another. Third, this is the age of artificial intelligence, deep data, and also Internet of Things are all now playing our households daily affairs. So if manufacturing sector or even economies like the way India has adapted to payment systems, digital payment systems, and the way India has adapted to identity, the way India has also adapted, for instance, in income tax, we use faceless technology to even send messages, to even draw assessments. Assessment orders are all sent online. So you fill it up and do every correspondence through it, and even questions asked, replies obtained are all now digitized. So when countries like India are moving in that trajectory, also proving that it can be scaled up so fast, whether it's vaccination, whether it is education related extension services, whether it is banking, whether it's income tax, whether it's health, because now consultants are somewhere in hospitals do the surgical requirements on a patient in a different place. There's just a all pervading impact of digital technology. But not all countries have been successful in moving towards it and scaling it up like the way we've done in India. And even better, many industries understand that for precision, that for greater quality, and for greater access to the raw materials and cost effective ways of production, you have to benefit from the Web3. So many industries themselves are resetting themselves. Global institutions during the pandemic, inclusive of WHO, realized that with the 20th century ways of doing things, you're not able to make or you're not able to handle the 21st century challenge. So, global institutions themselves are looking at how to become greatly adapted to the requirements of 21st century. In all this, the challenges faced by countries which are cut off from this flow of activities, be it the island nations, be it Africa, countries in Africa, be it some of the Latin American countries, the global south, as I said earlier, are just accessing technology, just accessing the benefits, equally facing the challenges of climate. Some of the island nations are really in deep trouble because water levels in the seas are rising. And countries like India are having unpredictable rains, cloudbursts, floods, sea erosion, rivers changing course, rivers drying up, excess heat. They compare it to what? A dry bulb or a wet bulb situation, and say that's the extent to which you can gauge how heat is affecting individuals, and people are advised not to get out of the house between 11 and about 4:30 or 5. Your productive hours are all influenced by climate change, not just agricultural crop production, not just water availability, water table. Day to day movements of people are also getting affected. So, in all this, India under Prime Minister Modi has been not just responding, but looking at it with great foresight. The commitments we've made and the achievements of the commitments earlier made in Paris are all happening with our own money, with our own efforts. The globally promised 100 billion for climate change is not there except in paper. So countries like India are, despite that resource not being available, making it possible for ourselves, whether it is through the International Solar Alliance or whether it is looking at climate resilient infrastructure, so that every year, because of floods, your houses are not getting washed away, and so on. So India is going through a major, rapid transformational change. Companies are also realizing that this is the time to invest in such technologies which will bring in innovation, artificial intelligence into the shop floors. That's why in the budget this time we announced Artificial Intelligence Excellence Center to be established in 3 locations in India. With that, we want to make India become artificial intelligence hub. So young minds like you all who are here should be able to keep constant touch with what's happening in India and benefit from it, equally contribute towards the developments happening there. I don't want to elaborate monologue. I'll sit down, and if the ambassador so finds it fit, we can always have an interaction, which can give me an opportunity to, however much I can, answer some of your questions. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Madam, for your insightful and inspiring remarks on global economy and how India can be an engine of growth for world economy. Thank you so much, ma'am. Friends, now we'll have a brief interactive session where Honorable Minister will reply to some questions and queries by the Indian diaspora. Please mention your name and profession before asking the question. Please be brief to have maximum participation.
Um, Thank you, Minister, for those very informative remarks. My name is Manohar Thiagaraj. I work for BAE Systems. I have charge of Korea and Vietnam. In December, I was in Hanoi for a trade show, and I was heartened to actually see the second largest pavilion was the Indian pavilion. Plenty of Indian companies there. I think the Korea-Vietnam relationship in that space is also poised for a leap. So my question is, building on that, there are complementarities between India and Vietnam and complementarities between Korea and Vietnam. How can India, even though Korea is not a part of the Quad, how can India and Korea continue to work together in the Southeast Asia region to develop each other's mutual interests?
Dinesh, Dinesh, yes, ma'am.
Well, from the trade perspective, which is not the focus of your question, but still, from the trade perspective, we have an FTA signed with Korea. In fact, ASEAN countries, we have an FTA. Aside from that, we also have FTAs with Korea and Japan and Singapore. So FTAs have given a big opportunity for goods to move, services to move freely as per the agreement, and no new tariffs are raised on those goods which are covered under the FTA. But even despite that, I find greater market access into Korea, for instance, is yet to materialize. Um, the FTA has benefited definitely countries like Korea and Japan to access Indian markets. And that's not to fault anybody, it's not to fault, particularly not to fault Korea. Our terms of agreement are being now reviewed with Japan, I think. I'm not sure so much with Korea. So the terms of agreement has not been understood or has not been suitably exploited by the Indian traders or manufacturers or service providers. The greater awareness has to be built on what are the benefits. So that's one. Second, um, aside from the FTA, there's a lot of investment interest in India from Korean manufacturers. I'll just take two of the examples which are literally in our face. Look at the Motors story. The production of Kia cars, the way in which Indians have taken to Kia, and also the exports that are happening from India of Kia Motor products. You wouldn't have heard of Kia cars in India a decade ago, but the rapid increase in the market for Kia tells you that Indian market is a very savvy market. People have the purchasing power. As much as few people buy their Range Rovers and everything, there's also market for these cars. And in fact, I would widen the dimension by saying if Indians are benefiting by getting Kia cars, the impact of Korea's culture, the music, the food, the silk, the beauty products, the skincare products. There are some enclaves within Chennai, for instance, where only Korean shops are present. Such places where there were middle class houses or apartments, but in the heart of Chennai, you find an entire road full of Korean products. I used to be member of parliament in Andhra Pradesh, from Andhra Pradesh to the Rajya Sabha. And there is a southern part of Andhra Pradesh which links up with the port, has a special area called Sri City. Many of you would have heard of Sri City. And Sri, it is not Sri City, where there is a university, Kriya University, or where there are many manufacturing units and so on. And that belt, actually, that road moves towards westwards going to Bangalore. That area, again, Kia Motors is present there. That area is full of Korean shops. Well, I would have thought Indians going and searching for certain products which is Korean in Anantapur district of Andhra Pradesh. So the impact of culture, impact of investments, impact Sri Perumbudur. in Tamil Nadu, which was earlier known to be part of the Kanchipuram district, also known for one of the very ancient Indian philosophers who lived 1,000 years ago, Sri Ramanujacharya. Today is known for Samsung. So the impact of Korea in India and the products of Korean made goods are absolutely etched in a common man's mind. People don't, many of us who want to buy Apple will buy Apple, but non-Apple buyers will first utter the name. The brand recall is for Samsung. So
Yes, please. Yeah, on this side. Yeah, Mr. Rajiv Mahajan. Mr. Rajiv Mahajan.
Madam, it's indeed a pleasure to see you here today and welcome you to Korea. I'm Rajiv Mahajan, and I work with a multilateral fund, the Green Climate Fund, which is also located in Korea. Firstly, many congratulations for steering the economy through turbulent times after COVID. I work in a diverse workforce, 70 nationalities, and everyone wonders in pride when they look at India's progress in that regard. So thank you so much, and thanks to the officials of the ministry as well. My question is very specific. I work in climate finance, and as you know, there is a need to channelize capital from savings into this space where it is much needed. I've often felt and I've observed India very, very closely over the last couple of years. Um, I think there could be a lot more that could be done in terms of having capital market policies, green bond policies that direct capital from savings uh, into sectors of climate that could be useful for the economy, and these could serve as templates for other economies as well. I wanted to know if there's a thought in the government establishment on putting in place such measures, whether in the ministry or in SEBI. So that's one. And secondly, I think um, encouraging technology in the space of climate is the next frontier. I mean, fintech India has done a lot, and that's going overseas as well. But in climate tech especially, a lot of potential exists. However, capital rarely flows into that sector. I mean, we are seeing green shoots right now, but a lot more has to happen. And if India does innovations in that sector, the world can catch on to that. So I think that's another frontier for South-South cooperation. So I wanted to know your thoughts on that. Thank you.
but I think on green, Prime Minister himself speaking in Scotland COP26 explains India's nationally determined commitments, and also subsequently coming from Scotland, and a couple of months later, uh, uh, amended version of it in some aspects were even more ambitious, and in some aspects reconciled figures were also announced for targets. Many of these targets are going to have to be achieved by 2030. India is moving very fast on it. And on green bonds, we had made an announcement even in the budget, and some movement has already happened in it. Whilst green bond is one thing, there is also a lot of attention to the municipal authorities to issue bonds, because many of them realize that many course corrections in order to have the ESG goals met will have to be funded, and they are now adept at accessing markets to get the funds. So municipal bonds are now becoming a big thing, whether it's treatment of waste or whether it is establishing more solar energy links. Municipalities are now coming out and successfully getting bonds. And retail savings are moving towards the stock market, and in a considerable way. And when they move into stock markets, a quick study has shown that companies which are well managed, board driven, take a very transparent position on what they do, and declare their annual performance well in an exhaustive fashion, are attracting retail investors. And many of the companies today are looking at a sustainable green priority driven production. In this Indian steel industry, I will have to put that example before you, are now facing the challenge of India's steel not going to be competitively finding a market in Europe because there could be a border tax on not so clean steel. So there are a lot of, actually, just a lot of change happening. And these are all towards making it greener, safer, and cleaner products. So Indian industry is actually now doing so many different acts at a time. The benefit of the reduction in corporate tax in 2019 under Prime Minister Modi, the benefit that they have derived is also for expansion, but expansion with being consistent with green goals. So there's a lot happening in India on that.
नमस्कार मैडम, सर नमस्कार। मेरा नाम मुकुल वार्ष्णेय है, मैं जॉन डियर कंपनी में काम करता हूँ and we are the largest exporter out of India, exporting in Korea also. Recently we moved our investment from United States, Augusta, to India, and in Make in India we are catering to US and European markets. We are very happy to share with the forum here that the supply chain in India is so robust that we have already achieved 48% local content, thereby reducing the cost of the equipment by about 18 to 19%. You mentioned about the digital. We are the smart connected factory, and I think the 5G technology that has been launched by the PM has been well leveraged and utilized by us. My question here is, ma'am, well, we are making in India, selling all over the world to 110 countries. We have a challenge in India where digital equipment or the system on the tractor does not have a very clear policy in India itself. We went to MITI, we went to Ministry of Agriculture, but we didn't get the right answer from them. How can we bring the technology? Because the future is sustainability. We want to be carbon neutral in agriculture. We also want to use IoT and remote sensing in agriculture, but there is no very clear policy or direction in India for using these technologies, where the world over these technologies are made in India and exported, ma'am.
But you've met the right people. So telling me is that, like,
No,
I
you are
only
a
can
thought
repeat
leader.
your things to them. They are the ones to take a call.
We wrote to several people, minister, but there were discussions, but there is no clear directions that we have got. And I think this will be needed to be resolved in order to bring IoT, remote sensing, and precision technology where the farmers need this. We want them to
Is it because these technologies are already available in India?
No, they are not. They are not. Currently, they are. But there's no clear framework that the government of India
right.
has. So we just wanted to make a request, because you are a thought leader and also a very senior leader in the Indian political. So if you want, we can come to India, make a representation to
No,
you.
you can always come to India.
No, I'm in India. I'm in India. I
right.
actually flew in this
Do
morning.
send your material first.
Okay, we'll send it to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, please. Yeah, one from the lady.
Namaste, ma'am, and namaste, everyone. My name is Shambhavi. I am a PhD student here at Korea Railroad Research Institute. First of all, I would like to say I am a very big fan of all your savage and witty replies. Also, I have one particular question that compared to Indian economy, which is almost 3 trillion, the amount of money India spend on its education compared to like South Korea or any other country is very less. Like, we have such a huge population, and even then we end up spending about 2.9% of our entire GDP. Compared to Korea, the GDP here is more than 4%, which is usually spent on education. We always talk about how Korea and other countries are doing much better than us, but when it comes to human resources and power, I feel that Indian students have that potential, but I don't know why the government do not spend more on education. So, would you tell us that what are your plans, or what are the government's plan to spend more on GDP for education, specifically for education? Thank you.
See, I'll begin by saying education health can take any amount of money, and it is justified to spend any amount of money on education health, no doubt. But both education and health are not just central government subjects. Both union government and state governments handle it. So even if I told you that last year I'd spent more than a lakh crore of rupees on education, you'll still, as a percentage, get only less than three, less than two, and so on. But what it doesn't include is how much each state is spending on it. So the state plus the center is what actually is going into education on the ground, whether it is primary, secondary, higher secondary, and state level collegiate education also. Center higher education goes into central universities. So unless we get the complete picture of what actually totally gets spent each year in education and health, you'll not know. See, GDP belongs to all of us. Every state contributes to it, center contributes to it. So it's a huge pie. So if you were to take the center's component onto this huge pie, which is contributed by everybody, it doesn't give the complete picture. So I submit to you that you should get the figures of the states and add to it the center's figure, and then look at what is going into education expenditure. Just for the center, I'll still say yes, much more can be spent. No doubt, education requires more and more and more. Health requires definitely more. So there's no difference of opinion on why are you not spending. No, I love to spend.
Specifically for R&Ds, because in Korea they tend to spend more on like you were mentioning about AI, IoT, and other stuff. So we already have a lot of projects like from Meta and different like from Google and other famous companies like even Hyundai. So they directly fund few projects, and we are part of those projects, and we learn different things which are not even related to our syllabus, but we know that in future these technologies are going to play a significant role. But I don't end up seeing anything like this in India.
That's why you have in the budget three centers of excellence for artificial intelligence.
Apart
Government of
from
India, budget, these Meta, Vagera, Google technology, that's what we've done.
but ma'am, except for AI, like for
No, no, ma'am. No, no, ma'am. So the more you extend this conversation, I'll keep throwing at you what we've done. But even throwing at you what we've done, I'll still concede we need to do lot more. But quantum mission announced one budget earlier, money given this time. You wouldn't want quantum, ma'am? You would want quantum, won't you? So, like that on sciences, particularly on sciences, there's just a lot of emphasis. And there are a lot of government run research institutions, National Physical Laboratory, Center for Molecular Biology, and so on. There are very many of them. All of them have research funds given to them through the budget, but they're all held like as though it is their domain. There are others who would want to participate in it. There are others who would want to contribute in it. That is why last budget, last or the one before, we had announced that there will be clusters now. Any infrastructure which is government given for promotion of science and research will have to be available for people in that area, industry or students. So they cannot be the domain of this particular institution where that lab is located, for which research funds are also given. You don't know much about, after a while money is gone, lab is ready, it's all there, but what kind of output comes from it, you really so every institution in that area around it, and private institutions or private commercial centers which want to benefit from that are all now brought into this fold. Therefore, there should be private and public partnership for improving on research. So there are a lot of movement happening to optimize the money which is given for R&D by the government. But it's also true, the names that you have taken, ma'am, are all private institutions, private companies. India too requires a lot of people to come into research in technologies from the private sector. Government can handhold, government can support, government can fund, but it has to be a lot more private and government together.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay, we take from this side. I think, yeah.
Namaste, ma'am. Thank you so much for very insightful talk on India's growing economy at a global stage. And it's very great pleasure to see you here and interact with you. My name is Iqbal Khazi, working as a research associate professor at Hanyang University. With no doubt, India is spending a lot of budget on R&D research in recent few years. In this context, I would like to have your views as a Honorable Minister of Finance on investment and productivity in Indian research institutes, and how to establish very strong collaboration with core institutes so that to develop more science and technology, and which ultimately leads to influence economy growth for India. Yeah, thank you.
Somewhat answered in this earlier question which was asked. Many bilateral arrangements between countries also include technical and scientific collaborations. So when you have an agreement with the US, when you have an agreement with science and technology cooperation with France, for instance, institutions benefit from institutions there. So technology or knowledge sharing happens. So when government to government sharing happens, and industry also becomes a part, because many of these activities are closely done with the CII, USISPF, or USIBC, or the French Alliance for Industries cluster, and so on. So government does it with institutions abroad, with governments abroad, and private institutions also, private institutions run by industry. When I say private institutions, I don't think it's yet universities or colleges. They do come into the picture, and there is a greater interest between and common knowledge sharing which happens between the countries.
Thank you. Hello, madam. Good afternoon. This is Partha Day. I am by professional one software engineer. Actually, I'm leading Indians in Korea. It is one of the largest community in Korea. So I have a couple of questions. One is, as a professional, so at one point we feel that to return back to India, that time actually we became clueless that whether to seek for new opportunity or to open new business, new startup in India. As India has a lot of schemes for startups like FFSS or um, credit guarantee scheme, Prime Minister Employment Generation Scheme. But many of us do not know. Like if you see the Korea, they have platform, they have drive to attract uh, non-resident Korean or any foreigner. They can come back here, they can set up any business if they have any idea, so they can do. So anything like if you have any plan to guide all NRIs or any returning NRIs, because they have a lot of ideas, they want to do something, and show how all the schemes can be helpful, how they can get the best out of it. So that will be great help. Thank you very much.
Well, you have the best of institutions to speak about India in the form of your Ministry of External Affairs, embassies in countries, and so on. But despite that, if you think there's not adequate flow of information, let's see. I'll go back and talk to the various departments concerned and see if there can be a common website available, or website with the domain specialisms made available or something. Let me see what is available now, and then taking your input, I'll talk to some people.
Yeah, this gentleman here.
Thank you very much. Madam, I have just one simple question. Because when you remit money from Korea to India, we use lots of applications, remittance app, but the inward remittance is very hard. So many of our members actually they post they need to transfer money from India to Korea. They can't do instantly. So we as a community member and friends, we
Wait a
help
minute,
each
wait a
other.
minute. Why would we have a law for inward remittance only against Korea? All right. Wait a minute. Let me elaborate. Inward remittance to Korea is difficult. We don't make a law to say make it difficult for all those who are sending money to Korea. No. There is an LRS scheme where you can transfer up to 2.5 crores, I think, in a year without any eyelid being batted. And for once, I have gone abroad to work, study, live, and come back in the days when we used to be given $500 and nothing more. Just $500. Do what you want, stay any longer you want, as long as the visa permits you. And that's what you have to do. I've gone like that. But today, when I know that if my daughter or if my friend or anybody has to go abroad and study, their parents can send 2.5 crores every year without a pain. And in that, no country is excluded. So you may want to get some more information on it. We can help. I'll ask the ambassador to help you with it.
Okay,
But
thank you very much.
transferring money out of India today is no big deal. And I can remember the days when I was counting my $500 and said, all right, I'll have to live with it. And that was big money to get the $500. You had to, my God, prove yourself, give Indian rupees and think God has done you a favor. Those days it was a favor, given a foreign exchange position.
Yeah, please. Yeah, this gentleman here, Mr. Kunza.
Hello, very nice to meet you, ma'am, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Kunjang Namgyal. I'm from Sikkim. I think you'd visited Sikkim in February. Thank you. And yeah, I know him. So
With me was a Sikkim guy.
yes, so yeah. Firstly, thank you for visiting Sikkim and letting more people know about Sikkim. I think it's a very unique culture, and many
Yes,
people
it's a beautiful state.
still don't know about Sikkim. Yes, so thank you for that. As an expat here, and because I work in the gaming industry, I work as a business development manager here at Krafton. I think many of the youth in India are interested in gaming and technology. So, but as well as many companies in Korea are interested to go to India in that field. But there are specific hurdles that they face when they look for investments in India. I know that over these last few years, it's been much more easier with your government, I think, especially because you've digitized so much. But what are the plans of the government of India to attract technology or gaming companies, especially from Korea and Japan, to India? And I'm sure you'll be speaking more on investments at the ADB conference, so maybe a focus on that.
If I may divert for just 1 minute.
Yes.
I love the meme and also the anime makers of Japan and Korea. I love them to come to India. What wonderful anime is here. I mean, I forget, I'm an adult, I'm a minister, I'm anything. Anytime I love to watch animes from Japan and Korea. My God, the mastery with which the story weaving happens. And it's so much positivity. There's just no, you watch a film and you come out crying. You watch a film and feel, wow, what has this world come to? You watch a film and say, what evil prevails? But you watch an anime from Japan or Korea, you just think, oh, wow, life has got to be like this. And that's what you want for adults and young today. And I want them to come first. No, you guys can come later. No, but on a serious note, India still doesn't have a coherent, states have their own. Some states have come up with such policies. Center is looking at it through the GST Council, which has had a lot of discussion, because that's going to be indirect tax. So there's a lot of discussion going on. You also know there was a group of ministers appointed in the GST Council to have a look at what is gaming doing to this country, and what is the employment potential, what is the consumption, and so on. But the taxing and regulating requires a lot more calibration, and that's where there's a lot of discussion going on at the ministers level. So once, I think, investors, being whichever sector in which they are, once this policy certainty arrives, the taxation becomes more transparent in the sense of clear, it'll attract investors, I would think.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, we come to the end of interactive session of Honorable Finance Minister with our community. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, ma'am, for taking out your precious time out of your busy schedule to